Hey, kia ora. How are you? I hope you're well. I hope your training is going really well. As for me, had a few breakthroughs which I want to share with you, but what I want to call this Invisible Sensei podcast today is Attack of the Clones. Now, when I put this up on Facebook, it might get pulled for copyright infringement, but failing that, it'll be called Clones. And it's interesting. I was doing some morning training this morning, and the kind of theme came to me. Pardon me. I was talking to a mate of mine who's a good friend, a brother, who is a martial artist. He's a black belt or shodan, I should say, but trained from really childhood. He's in his 30s now, but late 30s. Great martial artist, a great training mate, a close friend. And we were talking about kata, just for a change. And it's funny how things kind of change. And the reason I call it Clones, Attack of the Clones, is because I remember young. I do Okinawan Goju-ryu, and prior to that, Kyokushin, and as a younger man anyway. There always seems to have been some person from Okinawa or in the dojo. And as senior, when you first start your training, I know for me, there were people that I tried to emulate. As I became a little older and a little more experienced, there were certain sensei that we used to watch on videotapes. Yes, videotapes, friends and family videotapes, yes. For any young people who might be listening, get someone over the age of 30 to explain what a videotape is. Anyway, people like Higuana Sensei, Higuana Morio Sensei of the IGKF, Tiro Chinen Sensei of Jundokan International, God rest his soul, and a bunch of others. And for me, the way in which you try and emulate those practitioners, and I think it's a natural thing. Anything we do. I've got a friend of mine who's a writer, and we were listening to this speech by one of my favourite writers, a guy called Neil Gaiman, and he was doing an address at some prestigious college in America, and he talked about, before you start sounding like yourself, you sound like a whole lot of other people. We're always influenced by people. And I think for me, I was certainly influenced by a whole range of people. For me, early on, as I said, Higuana Sensei, Chinen Sensei, both completely different body types. Higuana Sensei is kind of this compact machine of karate. Chinen Sensei, may he rest in peace, was, I guess, a lighter build. Even though they did the same style of karate, they had quite different approaches in doing the same technique, so they came up together anyway. And for me, trying to emulate either of them, as I try to, I'm 6'4", a big guy, Samoan and Māori, and trying to emulate a 5'4" Okinawan gentleman doing kata and taking stances and things like that was kind of, it left me feeling rather inadequate, to say the least. And I think it's something that I've suffered from many years, a sense of inadequacy when I'm doing kata or practicing karate, and it's human nature. If you're taller, you want to be shorter. You're shorter, you want to be taller. Heavier, you want to be lighter. Lighter, you want to be heavier. All these kinds of things. Every one of those things I've named have different strength and weakness, obviously. But I think for me, I've always set out to be a clone, and trying to do kata in my mind's eye the way that I see other people perform it has, I think to a certain extent, has damaged my body. What I've been working with in my own personal training for the last, I would say, year is having a more relaxed, natural approach to performing techniques. if you look on this Facebook page, you see me practicing maigiri and a couple of other things. And for me, the notion of throwing a maigiri, full power and so on and so forth, has kind of changed from the time I started training very young as a child. Now in my 40s. So maigiri is an example. When I throw a front kick, as a younger man, it was all about the tension that I held in my body. Trying to get that last ounce of power into the technique was kind of where I was at. Trying to kick through the other side of the person, and that is an important thing to do, have that penetration point. But also to find a way which works with my body, my height, my reach, so on and so forth, and something which is not going to damage my body. I think I spent probably a good 30 years doing techniques in a way which has left me with, certain injuries. I'm very lucky actually compared to some. I have both my hips, both my knees, and my back is in reasonable shape. But I think what it comes down to is holding that tension in the body and trying to emulate someone who I don't bear any kind of resemblance to physically. And I think in the formative years, I think it's really important to find someone in your dojo, particularly your sensei or senpai, who you need a role model. You need someone to guide you. You need someone to emulate, and you do get to a certain point, I think, in your training where you need to have a look at who you're trying to emulate, and more importantly, why you're trying to emulate them. For me, I learned to box badly, but I did learn to box from my dad. My dad was about 5'5". So a massive reach difference. But it's really funny if you watch me trying to hit bags and things like that. Some friends of mine who are legitimate boxers say it looks like a big man trying to do a little man's boxing style. And I think that kind of crosses over to when we talk about karate. When you talk about any martial art that you do, at what point is it important for you, for me, for all of us to find what works for us, for our body, our mentality, our way of moving? Look, I have friends of mine who have hip injuries or knee injuries, back injuries, which mean that they can't do low stances without a sufficient warm up, or they can't stay in sustained stances like shikodachi. Certain kata are actually physically painful for them to do. And my friend Arapita, he said that one of the goals that he has had as an instructor was to make sure that people enjoy their karate, and that come the next day they were able to go to work and then come back and enjoy the training. And I thought, man, it's a real eureka moment for me, because I think that people get caught up, I know I certainly did, on making the training hard, stumbling out of the dojo, and I think there is a place for that. But I think that if you're doing the kind of karate which is damaging your body and it's making it painful for you, who enjoys being in pain? For me, I'm trying to do karate for the rest of my life. I practice kobudo, I practice iaido, I practice jiu-jitsu. I certainly wouldn't rate myself as any kind of master of any of these things, but the thing is, it's about acquiring an understanding of my body. It's about working with what I have as I get older. I think for me, when I try to be a clone of someone, like for instance, while I do these podcasts, usually what I do to inspire myself is I have up on my screen, I have some karate going in the background. At the moment, I have Sensei Rick Houghton from Shotokan in America. I've never met the gentleman, but I love his videos. Great instructional videos if you get an opportunity to look on YouTube. I watch his technique as an example, and I just go, my gosh, I feel fat, slow, unflexible, and in need of a lot of work. Now, the thing is, when I look at it with the eye of I want to be like him, then what I get is dissatisfied in myself, which creates tension, which pushes my karate back. But what I can do is look at what he's trying to do to perhaps there are principles that I can pick up and work on and put into my own personal study, as opposed to trying to be a clone of him or anyone else. Likewise, if you're teaching, like I've had students who are varying heights, weights, sizes, and it would be wrong of me to make someone who was 5'4" try and fight like a 6'4" kind of a person. It's not to say that that it doesn't make them effective, but it's really important to bring out their personal flavour, I think. Some people have said, you wrap the karate, you wrap the person around the karate. I think it's to wrap the karate around the person. I think it's wrap the kata around the person. I've had students that couldn't do shikodachi for extended periods, as I said before, so we do it standing. You have to ask ourselves, why are we doing this? I have people who I believe to be just as good and have just as much to give in terms of karate, but have felt, because of their impression of what karate should be, their desire to be clones, that they shouldn't do karate, which I think that martial arts, karate, irrespective of whatever style or method you follow, is I'm a huge fan of that, because I think it brings clarity and improves our lives. It doesn't improve our lives when we try to become clones. So I guess the point of this podcast today from the Invisible Sensei is that there's a time to emulate, and there's a time to find out what it is you're bringing to your karate, what it is that you're bringing to your personal practice, to your dojo, to your sensei. And I don't mean that in terms of suddenly deciding that at yellow belt after 3 weeks of training that you should be called Grandmaster and have 28 black stripes on your belt. No. What I mean is, what is your goal in terms of making karate healthy for you, something that works for you, instead of becoming a pale imitation of someone we can never be. I think the most important thing is to be who you are, to move in the way that you move, because I think that makes the world a better place, that makes the dojo a better place, it makes it more diverse, more interesting, and that's what karate is really all about. For me, kara is empty but also open. So we need to be open-minded about ourselves, our approach, and our training. So yeah, that's enough yabba from me, but I just wanted to say I hope you're enjoying your training, and whatever age, whatever range you're in, whatever martial art you're doing, try and make it your own. And for goodness sake, let's not be clones. It's just too much pain.